Mount. Now we will be reading his sermon from the Gospel of Luke, nicknamed his Sermon on the Plain. You will see many parallels between both sermons, but Jesus presents some of his same teachings with a slightly different focus. It begins with a list of who are blessed, and this is similar to the Beatitudes in the Sermon on the Mount, but here Jesus provides a contrasting section where he says, woe to those, and then the opposite attribution listed above. I think it'd be proper to dive into some of these. Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God, but woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled, but woe to you who are full now, for you will be hungry. Blessed are you when people hate you on account of the Son of Man, for surely your reward is great in heaven. But woe to you when all speak well of you, for that is what their ancestors did to the false prophets. The summarizing message Jesus is making is this: blessed to those who are not in worldly peace, in worldly content, in worldly comfort, for you shall receive true heavenly peace, heavenly content, heavenly comfort, joy, all of this with God in death. But woe to everyone who tries to have peace and comfort and content on earth through the means of earthly things, such as enough money, copious amounts of goods, possessions, wealthy connections, people who attempt to make heaven on earth a reality. For you will choose to be consoled here, but not in death. Not to get too political, but I think the reason so many various ideologies often fail is because, one, of two reasons. We are striving after something that is anti-natural, anti-cosmological, or anti-divine, just anti-God, anti-his design. Or we are striving to create heaven on earth everywhere. We have this mentality of earth is it, death is the end, and we need to create earth into this heavenly paradise rather than trying to get people to that heavenly paradise. So here's the reality. Heaven is on earth. It's in every sanctuary in every Catholic church. That is heaven. But everywhere else is the world and will remain the world until Christ comes and institutes a new heaven and new earth. There will always be pain. There will always be suffering. As Jesus says, you will always have the poor. So how do we help the poor? Is it through policy or through people? Christ's church is his people, and that is his mark of charity. So we need to be better. Not our government, but we need to be better. So remember, the goal is heaven, not earth. The goal is for joy in heaven, not on earth. That doesn't mean we can't have joy or comfort or peace on earth, but make sure that it's through the means of a heavenly means and not an earthly one. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. For the measure you will give will be the measure you receive. The word mercy comes from the Latin word misericordia. It's where love meets us in our misery. And misery isn't just a word for sad. It's a word for broken, for dismay, for lost. That we need love in our horrid sinfulness. When we commit a sin so heinous against God's love, against the church, when we are disgusting, that's when we need love the most. So when someone is being miserable to you, they are in misery. They're acting in misery, and they don't need your self-righteousness or judgment, but they need your love. They need the mercy in which God has extended to you. The sermon continues and Jesus asks, can a blind person lead the blind? There's this funny comic of several blind people touching an elephant, and each person is feeling a different part and is coming to a different conclusion of what this object is because they only have some of the information needed to come to a full realization. In an iteration of this, I couldn't find it, but there's a bunch of Protestant theologians touching the elephant, and such as in the comic with the Pope standing on a chair, looking at them all, yelling, "It's an elephant." This passage is about a more personal sense, role models. Be careful who you look up to, your parents, politicians, mentors, friends, colleagues, etc. But I think it also is prudent to apply this to religion and theology, that who are you going to listen to more? Dr. Joe Schmo, who got his master's in theology in the middle of Indiana, or write-ins and commentaries from a man who lived with Jesus for 2 years and helped build the foundations of the church in the 1st and 2nd century. That doesn't mean that Dr. Joe Schmo has nothing good to say. You might have some very good insights, but it's more of a question of where to start. Because when you know it's an elephant, and then you go up close and you only have certain information, you now know that this snake is really the elephant's trunk. You now know that this rope is actually a tail, because elephants don't have rope. They don't have snakes. So knowing that it's an elephant first is going to help you discern when you look at other things in the more nitty-gritty and the close-up in different areas and different spheres of influence. You're going to be able to have some foundation to go off of. Speaking of foundation, finally Jesus ends the sermon with the same story of the wise man and the foolish man who built their houses on rock and sand. However, there was a line that is changed from Matthew's account. In Matthew's gospel, it says regarding the wise man, the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall because it had been founded on rock. But in the Gospel of Luke, it says, when the floods arose, the river burst against the house, but could not shake it because it had been well built. So what were the two reasons the house built by the wise man did not fall? First, because he chose a good foundation, the rock, to build it on, something strong, stable, consistent. But as shown in Luke, it also wasn't a crap manufactured home that was on top of a good foundation. Like, the house itself was well built. As Christians, we can have Christ as a foundation all we want, but unless we put in the work to build our lives as a well-built house atop this firm foundation, then maybe before we know it, our house is falling apart. If Christ is our cornerstone, let us carefully and wisely continue to place the rest of those stones down in accordance to his word, his church, and his glory, so that our lives may remain and become and emulate a reflection of Christ's life through love, through mercy, through obedience, and through holiness.